The algorithm doesn't care about your niche. Two channels, one niche, similar topics, similar delivery. One gets 500,000 views, the other 3,000. The difference isn't in video quality, editing, voice, or equipment. The difference is that one of them hit the cluster and the other is shooting into empty space. And right now, I'll explain in simple terms what that means and why it changes everything. The most common mistake is copying the niche. You find a competitor with 1 million subscribers, break their video down to molecules, write out the structure, take the same hooks, rewrite the script, repeat the same triggers on the thumbnail, and think, the skeleton is the same, the hooks are identical, so this should blow up. But the video gets almost nothing, and it's not clear why. Because the perfect structure is just the form. What actually works is the viewer's cluster, and this is where it gets interesting. Let's separate these concepts once and for all. A niche is the topic. Crypto, weight loss, psychology. A cluster is the people, their fears, their ambitions, their language, the way they divide the world into us and them. And that's the key idea. The algorithm looks for a match between the content and the viewer's psychological profile. Let me show you how this works. Many people think a good hook is universal. That's an illusion. The same hook will destroy metrics in one cluster and kill retention in another, even inside the same niche. Let's take the niche of making money and 2 different clusters inside it. Cluster A, achievers. They want status and superiority. They believe poverty is just laziness. Cluster B, people are tired of the system. They want freedom and quiet. They hate corporations and bosses. The video's topic is exactly the same, how to make $10,000. But the hooks have to sound completely different. Hook for Cluster A. How I made $10,000 in a month while everyone else was whining about the economy and no jobs. It hits ambition, superiority, and a bit of arrogance. Hook for Cluster B. How to quietly reach $10,000 a month so you can tell your boss goodbye forever and leave the rat race. It hits the fear of spending life in an office, the desire for freedom. The enemy is the system outside. These are 2 very similar hooks about $10,000. But if you show the first one to Cluster B, they'll think, just another guru, and swipe away. If you show the second one to Cluster A, they'll get bored. That's exactly why a simple rewrite kills conversion. When you smooth out the wording and the edges, especially if a neural network writes the text, you erase the message's psychology. The viewer doesn't see their markers, and they feel it instantly. This person is not one of us.
Now, the next point, the visual cluster. Clusters recognize their own people even at the level of color in a fraction of a second before conscious thought. Yellow with black, urgency, money, attention. Purple, mystery, depth, esoteric themes. Red, conflict, exposure, confrontation. You could perfectly copy a competitor's script, but if the visual language of the thumbnail doesn't match the habits of the cluster, CTR will be dramatically lower. The brain simply skips the image. Most people won't click, and they won't even know why. And here is the key idea. People don't consider something true because it is logical or useful. They consider it true because it confirms their internal model of the world. If your video confirms their hidden fears, their unspoken beliefs, their shared enemy, the viewer gets a feeling. Finally, someone is telling the truth. And that feeling has nothing to do with the content itself. It's about matching the cluster. Okay, so what exactly makes up a cluster? If you break it into layers, there are 6 levels. First, self-identity, who the viewer believes they are. I'm an entrepreneur. I'm a rebel. I'm an intellectual who sees what others don't. Second, worldview, the axioms that are never questioned inside the cluster. Money is energy. A job is modern slavery. Real growth only comes through pain. This is their default truth. Third, the driver, the main fear and the main ambition. The fear of living a gray, ordinary life, being unnoticed, reaching 50 and realizing you achieved nothing. The ambition is not just money, but control, freedom, and status. Fourth, the shared enemy. Nothing unites people like a shared enemy. The system, lazy complainers, corporations, fake gurus. The enemy creates a sense of tribe. Fifth, language and codes, markers of us versus them in vocabulary. One cluster says resource, awareness, momentum. Another says system, process, metrics. If you use the language of the wrong cluster, you won't be accepted.
even if the idea itself is correct. Sixth, aesthetics, visual signals. The pro-status cluster prefers expensive minimalism, black, clean visuals, high production. The hype-driven cluster prefers loud yellow and red. That's the whole mechanism.
When you analyze a competitor through these 6 layers, you don't just see a video. You see the psychological portrait of their audience. And then it becomes clear why superficial rewriting is doomed. You copy the form, but you miss the people. So what should you do in practice? Stop copying niches and start aiming at the cluster. Take a competitor and see which topics get views and which ones fail. The difference between them outlines the cluster. Then read the comments. The language, fears, enemies, axioms, everything is right there on the surface. And build content around that, not around the topic, around the people. Okay, now you understand how the algorithm finds the viewer through the cluster, but the viewer still hasn't clicked. In the next video, we'll break down how the decision to watch or scroll happens in half a second. There are 3 elements. If even one of them is off, the whole thing collapses.